Over the weekend, Nova Scotia was the site of what is being called the worst gun mass shooting massacre, whatever you want to call it, in Canada in effectively recorded history. As of right now, when we're filming this, at least 18 people are dead, but because of the nature of the set of shootings, it is possible that more victims could be found at some point. I want to catch up on the basic details of this. A confrontation with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police began after a manhunt for a fleeing suspect overnight Saturday. Multiple crime scenes and hours of evasion later, the gunman was killed Sunday in a shootout with police. And so you need to know that this happened over a long span of time. It was like half a day, effectively, that this was playing out over many miles, a lot of distance. And one of the things that made it difficult, Francesca, for the response initially is that for at least a few hours on Sunday morning, the suspect was disguising himself as a police officer. He had a uniform and he had something that looked like a police car. And so it does appear that this was planned. We don't know much about the motive. They're saying that he appeared to have relationships with at least some of the people that were victims of this shooting, but not necessarily all. And so we don't know the motives yet. We do know the person. He was killed. I'm not interested in giving him any publicity in terms of his name or face, but that's basically what we know so far.
And I'm guessing he wasn't Muslim or of Middle Eastern descent, because
it is my belief that he is not.
Terrorism at this point.
Yeah.
Trump would have definitely tweeted about it in those terms at this point. I mean, it's incredibly scary. It's awful. Like, especially when you hear about these planned attacks that take place over, half a day, that are super thought through. I mean, I feel like the Mandalay Bay, Vegas shooting was like that as well. And also I'm reminded of the shootings in Norway and the ways that these places that are generally pretty sleepy, beautiful, like, oh my God, you're in Nova Scotia, enjoy it. It's gorgeous there if you can be outside. And then you have a mass murderer on the rampage. It's like there's something that doesn't sit well in any case, but it's like very, very haunting to know that someone goes to that length to plan it.
Yeah, and I mean, look, no matter what is going on in the world, if a person is planning to do this, it is difficult for rational people to imagine doing something like that, to be driven by so much either just being deranged or so filled with hate that you'd be willing to do this. And I know that this is a stupid thing, I guess, to say, but this is the damage report, so I'm going to say it anyway. It seems weirder in a pandemic, honestly, like that you're surrounded by so much death, that so many people are dying literally every day, and you think, no, I'm not going to contribute to more of it, actually. Yeah. I mean, I guess, look, the world continues even under lockdown, including the worst parts of it. Twitter is evidence of that literally every day. But the idea that you would, we're 2 months or a month and a half into a lockdown, and this person thinks, yeah, I'm gonna go out shooting. I'm gonna take some people down and add, even more pain to one of the worst things that's happened in our life in the world.
And actually, interestingly, I've been thinking about the fact that the, shelter in place orders that hopefully are being abided by in many states we're going to see a decrease in the amount of gun violence. So this obviously is in Canada. This is, an outlier, but I think we have seen a decrease in the amount of mass shootings because people are not congregating in large groups anywhere, right? It is a horribly morbid, silver lining to this entire situation. But yeah, man, why not just sneeze on these people? Come on.
Oh, jeez. We are apparently seeing a decrease in mass shootings. I mean, many people saw that March was the first March in America in a very long time that we didn't have a school shooting because kids weren't actually in schools. Now, in some places, we are not seeing a decrease in gun violence, but it is a different sort of gun violence. And of course, as people are scared and paranoid, and many people have lost their jobs and they're not getting the help that they need, those are the sorts of things that could give rise to more individualized gun violence rather than sort of planned school shootings, those sorts of things. And so the violence might continue in a different form. I don't know overall how the numbers will change over time. Hopefully there will be a reduction. That would be nice.
I mean, that's an interesting question too. Is I don't know. I believe that, are gun stores deemed essential? Right. I know I've seen lines, but this was a few weeks ago outside of gun stores. Right. There were many, many people, and especially Asian Americans, who were arming themselves, I believe, defensively. Right. Because of the amount of anti-Asian racism and violence and just, the president stoking that as well.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting question. Is like, all right, are we in this country, in the U.S. at least, like somehow it's deemed essential to go and be able to buy your
Yeah.
AR-15.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what to make of that, of those lines. I did find that very frustrating too when I saw that. Part of me wonders to what extent it's people who already own guns want to own more, and like with any big purchase that you don't technically need, but you kind of want to have, you'll take an opportunity to convince yourself that you need to do it now. I don't know. Like I have dress shoes, but when I got married, I bought new ones because you need to have
Wow.
new
Yeah.
dress shoes for your wedding. So I think there might be some of that, but then also the idea that there's some people who are like, oh, maybe this is the opportunity that I'm finally going to get to shoot another person, something that's been lurking in the back of my mind. Now it might become necessary. Wouldn't that be the worst thing imaginable, that someone might break into my house and I might have to shoot them? Hopefully that's a small percentage of the American public, but we know that it's a part. I also want to say just on Canada in particular, so 18 people died. One apparently was a police officer. I believe it's Constable Heidi Stevenson, who had been on the force for 23 years. One other officer was wounded. I am reading that one of the reasons that mass shootings like this are so rare in Canada is in part because after 1989 shooting that left 14 people dead, they enacted new gun laws, similar to Australia. These countries, very reasonable countries, saw horrible violence and thought, let's do what's necessary to not have that some more. And although it hasn't stopped all shootings from happening, we haven't seen the sorts of mass shootings generally that we do in America when we say, we value the ability to own, 30 ARs more than we do, the value of people's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you may raise a good point about the way that quarantine is affecting people's lives, and actually making their situations perhaps more violent. I mean, we know that a lot of mass shooters have turned out to have histories of domestic violence, and right now, when everyone is staying at home, and I know there is a lot of alcohol consumption, there is a huge concern that domestic violence is increasing. So while we might see fewer mass shootings, this case excluded, there perhaps will be, and I think there is more domestic violence because people are staying at home, they're scared, they're locked in with their families, they realize their kids are kind of crappy, whatever. The point is that then, it's important for law enforcement to actually follow up and follow the signs when family members call them to say and to warn them about their loved one or their family member who's being abusive to them, right?
Yeah.
We know that actually, if those things had been stopped, that if domestic violence had been stopped, that then you can, preemptively prevent something like a mass shooting. And I'm not saying that was the case with this guy. I'm just saying these are patterns that we have seen, not thankfully, but because we live in one of the most dangerous countries when it comes to gun violence.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going to continue to watch to see. Hopefully that will be the entirety of those who are victims of this horrible act of violence. It is possible, as I laid out, that others have as well. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.